I thought there would be more people here tonight, considering how many people have made a comment about this workshop this year. I know how it goes.
I'll watch it online and make comments later. I don't know if you noticed.
Good evening. I'd like to call the January 23rd, 2023 Planning Commission meeting to order. Please join me and stand and we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All righty. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
No, sir.
All right, very good. Just by way of announcement, I always want to acknowledge City Councilman Clint Holland. Thank you for being here. And also would like to recognize our new city manager, Bob Curnow. Welcome, Bob, to the Planning Commission meeting. Would you have any comments you would like to make?
No, I don't. Like I said, it's just great to be able to sit in the audience for a change.
Sure. And also acknowledge our assistant city manager, Justin. I forget your last name, but Justin. Welcome back. All right, very good. All right, then item number 4, approval of the minutes. Commissioners, all of you have been given the minutes for review. These are the minutes from the meeting December the 12th, 2022. Are there any changes, additions, deletions to the minutes? Hearing none, then the chair will entertain a motion to approve such minutes. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from December 12th, 2022 as submitted.
Is there a second?
A second?
Any discussion on the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposes? The ayes have it. Very good. Item number 5, no agenda items. Item number 6.
Mr. Link, I'm sorry, did we miss I might have misspoke. Laura has a update on the development status report.
Yes, no, you know what? So when we got to number 3, I just kind of shot by it. I made the welcomes and didn't go back to her report. So pardon me, Laura. Certainly don't want to,
It's all right. It's good to just get those minutes out of
So
the way.
let's turn over to the development status report, because we've been talking about that, so
We figured we were
how
done.
dare us pass it by. Anyway, Laura, I want to turn over to you for the development status report.
All right. Well, here we go. So yeah, it's been a while since we've made it a practice of keeping this report up to date and reviewing it with you all on a regular basis. So we'd like to make a habit of that this year, and it's our goal to update it, we hope maybe twice a month, and posting it on our website for easy access for y'all and the public as well. So before we get straight into the project lists, I'd like to review the development process with you real quick so you have a better understanding of our process and what the developers go through when they develop a new site. And so here we have that side by side, the charts. They're very similar, but there are a few differences, so we'll break it down here for you. On the residential side, we start with a conceptual plat, which is required for all subdivisions, and it must be approved by you, the Planning Commission. And what that is basically a drawing showing the subdivision layout, shows the roads and all the development lots, their home lots, and any open space. And so that's what a plat is. And then after the plat is approved, they move into the construction plan phase, which is their engineering drawings. And that is reviewed and approved by staff, and it includes erosion control plans, which is they have to take certain measures to prevent erosion from happening during construction and sediment and whatnot leaving the site and going on to other adjacent parcels during the construction process. Once the engineering plans are approved, we come down to the land disturbance permit, and the developer will have to install his erosion control measures, and then once that is inspected and approved, the city engineer will issue a land disturbance permit. And once they have that permit, they can begin site construction. And so they'll begin to put in infrastructure such as the roads, sewer, water, stormwater, etc. Once that construction process begins, they are able to submit the final plat, which is just the more refined drawing, the conceptual plat, but more refined. And in the meantime, the city has assigned addresses for all of the home lots, so that will also appear on the plat. And we will, the staff will review, and once that is approved, they will file it with the county. And once it gets a stamp on it, they'll give us a copy for our records. And then once the final plat is approved, they are able to go ahead and submit for building permits so they can start building some of the houses. And during the building permit process, you know, they're building, there's lots of inspections that happen. The building department goes out and inspects during the construction of the houses. And then once they have a house complete, they have a little landscape inspection, which each lot is required to have 2 trees. And a code enforcement officer will stop by and make sure they have the allotted trees. And once that is complete and all the final building inspections and the fire department have signed off, they'll be issued a certificate of occupancy and they can sell that house to a buyer. And thus, that is the residential development process. Jumping over to the commercial side, very similar. We start with a conceptual site plan instead of a plat, required for non-residential development activity for new buildings, building expansions, etc., which, as you know, we bring in for your review and approval. And then once that is approved by y'all, they submit their, we call it a final site plan in the planning department. It is essentially their construction plans or their engineering documents. That can be a little confusing if you hear us call it a final site plan. Anyway, so that is their construction documents. Again, it also includes erosion control, those erosion control plans. And once those are approved, the developer will install their erosion control measures, which will then be inspected by the, will be inspected and approved by the city engineer. And once it's approved, he will issue the land disturbance permit. And once that is issued, construction can begin. Also, once those engineering plans are approved, the building permits can also then be submitted. The applications can be submitted. The building department will oversee that process for the building permits, whatever they're building on the site, whatever new structures they're building. Then the site construction process includes, again, all the infrastructure, probably not new roads like a subdivision, but all the sewer, water, stormwater, and all that, and ongoing inspections. Once the construction begins, as most of you are aware, we require a landscape plan, which the developer will submit, and we will bring to you for review and approval. And then finally, in order to complete the project, there'll be final inspections from the building, the fire, the planning, and the engineering departments, and once everyone has signed off, they will be issued a certificate of occupancy, and the project will be finished. So, let's take a look at the project list. We're going to start with residential. I just want to say before we go through these, I mentioned to y'all when I sent you your packets that you'll notice that we have a column for a commissioner representative, and there are several blank spots since we haven't done this in quite a while. So we're going to be asking for some volunteers to sort of act as a liaison for each of the projects. And all that means really, it sounds a little more daunting than it really is. As I mentioned, we're going to put these reports online, and you know, the public may have questions from time to time. They may reach out to you with questions, and you should be somewhat familiar with the project, and you may not know the answers, and that's fine. You just reach out to us, or just pass the question along to us, and we'll handle it, so that's not a problem. But more often, something may come up where you all have approved some architectural plans, and perhaps there was a particular brick selected, and they find that brick is no longer available when they go to order materials, so they have to make a substitution, and they'll email us and say, we can't get this brick, here's another one we've chosen, it's very similar. And we would probably reach out to you and say, here's what they've chosen. We think it's a good match. What do you think? And you would let us know your opinion. So that's really all. Okay. So let's get into the residential projects. I'm sure you all have been wondering when Crestwind and Everton are going to be finished. Well, not quite yet. They're getting closer. As you can see, Crestwind is about 89% complete. Everton about 71% complete. Oh, by the way, I was also going to mention what we're going to do here is we'll just quickly run through all these projects, and then we'll work on filling in the commissioner blanks at the end. Anyway, so you can see we're still in site development for Crestwind and Everton. Everything else is approved. The plat, construction plans, they're just plugging away. Laurel Brook, as you might know, is somewhat of a complicated site. They have several different types of housing at that project, and some of them fall under the residential list, and some of them are on the commercial list. And so here on this list, we have the single-family housing type, and we also have the townhomes. There are 16 single families, and there are 6 townhomes, and each of those are in progress at this time, under construction. Mill Farms is the development that will be out on Red Wine, and they are still, their engineering plans are still under review. And I was going to tell you, I believe, yes, they have, it's not shown up there, but they have about 75 lots in their subdivision. Rockaway Townhomes is down on Rockaway Road across from Summerby on the south end of town. And they have, I believe it's 34 townhomes. And their site work is technically in progress. It looks like they have completed their site work. It seems to be at a standstill. They still need to submit their final plat and complete that process, but we haven't received that yet. Smoke Rise Corners, that's up by Sumner Road, and they're not quite 50% yet, 26 properties there. Towson Village, that's the Governor Square, the property at Governor Square in the back that we annexed the property. That's going to be completed in 2 phases. They're currently in site work is in progress, and they're working on platting phase 1. The total property has 94 lots, and phase 1 will have 37. So once they get that final plat approved, they'll get started on those 37 lots. And finally, Wilkesmore Woods. That is boy, they went like gangbusters on this one. That is the subdivision on the east side of McDuff across from Crestwind. And they have 180 lots in there, all close to 90% complete. They only have about 20 properties left in there to go. So they moved through that one pretty quick. Anyway, do y'all have any questions on any of those? All right.
No.
Michael, you want to?
All right, sure. So, commissioners, what I'd like to do is just see if there's any of you who are interested in, we're going to start with the residential properties, projects, to see if any of you would volunteer to be the commissioner listed. Now, Kenneth and Scott and I are already listed, so maybe we'll offer our newest commissioners an opportunity to fill in a couple of those gaps if you're so inclined. So there's 5 vacancies, if you will. Any of you have any interest for any particular one or 2 of those?
Sure. I can do Mills Farm
Mills Farm?
and Rockaway Townhomes.
Okay. And Commissioner Chris, by the way, you're included in this conversation, so.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I was
Yeah.
allowed to.
Well, no, yeah, absolutely, you are.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
So-
mean, if you want to put my name down for one of the top two, I'm okay with that, because I live in that general neck of the woods.
Okay.
And I'm happy to take the other one.
Okay.
All right, who wants Cresswin?
Let's give it to Andrew.
Okay.
Yeah, Andrew, he's-
Decision made. And then Everton Mid-C.
All right, Towson Village. It's a big one.
Well, Ms. Johnson, Commissioner Johnston.
Or we could do it in phases too. Once this gets going, we could break it in.
If she wants to take it all.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Sure.
Very good. Okey doke. Let's move on then to, so we have a few more commercial projects than we do residential. And we have several of these in the engineering plan review stage. So we'll just start at the top, and there's not a whole lot to say about a lot of these. All right, Aberdeen mixed use, that is the Royal mixed use project. Yeah, Royal, why don't you say Partners Pizza, you know what I'm talking about. Their conceptual site plans were approved, and we are currently in the engineering plan review process. Adventure Aviation out there on International Drive, it's a very large warehouse. In progress, engineering plans. Bradshaw Corners is the commercial development adjacent to the Smoke Rise Corners residential subdivision out there on Sumner. And they've been in the engineering plan review phase for a while, and we're not quite sure what's going on out there. We have a feeling they might be trying to sell. So, but we don't know that for sure. And then Caliber Car Wash is nearing completion. Their building is under construction, and their landscape plan has been approved. The convenience store down there, also near Summerby at the intersection of 74 and Rockaway Road. The building is under construction. Their landscape plan is approved, so they're just ticking along down there. Certainty is sort of an interesting project. They're relocating a lot of their infrastructure, piping and things, so they can add some silos. They're doing some interior renovations in order to expand their line. And thus they have some engineering things to attend to, and so that's under review at this time. What's next? Gersheimer has a large building expansion, 86,000 square feet, and their engineering plans are under review. Gerber Collision on 74, you all recently approved their conceptual site plan not too long ago, and their engineering plans are under review. Guthrie's next to McAllister's, excuse me. They are coming along, and they are nearing completion. We still need to, they have not submitted their landscape plan for review yet, so we'll be waiting on that, and that should be coming to us, I would say, sometime soon. Here we have some more of those Laurelbrook housing types. So there are 2 condo buildings on that property, and they have been approved for construction, but they have not started development on those yet. And then the amenity building, which includes 8 cottages. The amenity building, the building plans have been approved, and the building construction has started on the amenity building, I believe. The 8 cottages have been completed. And then Maxim Lighting that is the old Zach Brown building. I don't remember what that was called, but y'all probably know what that was. They were approved. Their conceptual site plan was approved. We have never received any engineering plans for review, and it's been almost a year since their conceptual site plan was approved.
And what that means, I'll just talk loudly. What that means is that after a year, those plans expire and they fall off the list.
And they would have to resubmit.
Okay.
They would have to resubmit and go through the engineering process, review process again. Which leads us to the next one, which has, that, I guess, been through that a few times.
Laura, can I ask you a question
Yes,
first? So-
absolutely.
So when it gets close to that year period, do you guys contact them?
If we want to be nice. Yes,
Typically,
we
yes.
will.
Okay.
We will. Just give them a nudge, make sure they're aware. The residents in on World Drive, that did happen to them, and we are currently re-reviewing their plans so that they can be reapproved. And then Stars Mill Medical Office, you recently approved their conceptual site plan. This is on, Wilshire Village Drive, which is basically off of Rockaway Road behind the new convenience store that's being developed. And their engineering plans are under review. And then finally, the Gates Medical Office, you just approved this conceptual site plan, I think at the last meeting, maybe. And we have not received their engineering plans yet. And of course, that's right at the entry to the Gates subdivision at the south end of town. And there you have it. Let's get some volunteers.
Sure. Thank you, Laura, for sure. So let's just start at the top at Aberdeen Mixed Use. Are there any volunteers for that? Kenneth Hamner?
Ken? Was that Ken?
Yep.
Yes. All right. Adventure Aviation, volunteer?
I'll take that one.
Scott?
Who was that? Scott?
Yep.
All right. Caliber Car Wash,
Oh, it's got that one, okay.
Mr. Kriz? All right. The C-Store Dunkin', I'll take that. Convenience store and the Dunkin' Donut. How about Certain Teed Expansion?
I can take that one.
Okay, Ms. Reese. Gershenmeyer Expansion,
So I'll take that one.
Ms. Johnston, okay. And Gerber Collision. Any interest?
I'll take that one too.
Okay. Guthrie's,
I can take that one.
all right, Ms. Reeves. Maximum Lighting Expansion,
We'll be down for that one.
all right, Chris. Residence Inn,
Reeves, you can put me down for that one.
all right. I'll take the Star Mills Medical Office. And last but not least, the Gates Medical.
I'll take the Gates.
All right, written down. Very good.
All right, thank y'all.
And so you'll update this and bring that back to us, correct?
I will.
Excellent,
And then we'll
excellent.
post it online as well.
Very good. Thank you, Laura. It's been a long time coming, but thank you for actually going through that as well. That's helpful, for sure. Any questions or comments by the commissioners about this report? All right, then we'll move on. And- very good. All right, so we'll go to
yes.
the item number 6, and there are no new agenda items. So we'll move on to the workshop item, PW 23-01-01, discussion to reinstate the Planning Commission public hearing function. And for background information, we'll turn it over to Robin.
Thank you. I am not going to do a PowerPoint tonight. I thought since we're having a discussion, the best way to have a discussion is to actually talk and not talk to a PowerPoint. So some of you all were here and are familiar with a little bit of the history, but since there are a few who are new, I would go through that. Back in 2021, the city ordinances were revised so that the Planning Commission no longer held a public hearing. That there had been some legal moves or findings from the Georgia Supreme Court that put into question what exactly a public hearing was. Was it a legislative, or was it held for items that were legislative in nature, or was it held for items that were quasi-judicial? You had a lot of differing opinions in the legal world, and so what council did at that time was just say, we're concerned that if it's quasi-judicial, if rezonings are going to be considered quasi-judicial, what that means what that means is that anything that is said in the public hearing becomes fact for the case, and there's no opportunity for more information or even clarification to be added to that case. Quasi-judicial literally means if it goes to the court, they just open up the case record and they review it for the facts that are there. So there's no new opportunities. And what that could put y'all in a position of is if you say something that could be held as the opinion of the city. And there are certain things that we have to be mindful of when we are holding when we're in a public forum. There are certain laws, the Fair Housing Act, that we want to be aware of, that we don't say things that are somehow put us in jeopardy. And so they removed that public hearing responsibility, but I'll say that doesn't mean that you didn't have some kind of public discourse. You maintained what was called a public workshop. And in many ways, it was operated very similarly, not exactly though. One thing that this body did was it no longer votes. What it does instead would listen, have discussion back and forth, and then at the end would provide a summary of pros and cons and general conclusions, but no hard and fast vote. What has changed since that time? So we've been doing that since 2021. There haven't been that many rezonings that have come before you guys, or even before the before the city council. But what has changed is last legislative session, they passed House Bill 1405. And that technically goes into effect July 1st of this year. And among many, many things, one of the things that it did was clarify which zoning actions are quasi-judicial and which ones are legislative. And it clearly defined variances and appeals to variances to be quasi-judicial, and other things like rezonings and text amendments to the zoning ordinances, those are legislative. And so you all don't hear variances, they go straight to city council anyway. So now there are no public hearings that you guys could hold that would be considered quasi-judicial. And so some of that concern, some of that extra weight put onto y'all has been lifted. And so the city council has asked us to, they have started the process of reinitiating that public hearing process. And so tonight, they are asking you all to deliberate and give some of your opinions and thoughts and just general ideas about what it is that you would like. How does holding a public hearing affect you? Does the vote help or does it hinder? These are some of the questions that I just put up here to kind of start the brains firing a little bit. But really, what you guys take off and run with some of that discussion.
All right, thank you, Robin. So Robin gave us really a good synopsis of what happened. I'm going to take a step and go back and also kind of give you my version of what happened, because I think it's important for all the commissioners to at least understand what I believe happened. So I was commissioner, just like a couple of other folks up here on the dais, and it was brought to my attention that by the city manager at that time that we needed to change the way we needed to change the system of voting to a workshop. And I asked him why, and he said, well, quite frankly, and I'm not, I'm just telling you how it is. And by the way, I've shared these same comments with the mayor and other city council members, so I'm telling you the same thing I shared with them. Well, actually what happened was Commissioner Gresham, who's no longer commissioner now, he and I were called to a meeting by John Roy and a couple of city council members and said, we're going to change the way you guys are doing business. And Paul and I asked, well, why is that? And he said, well, quite frankly, we don't like it when you guys vote one way and the city council votes another way and puts the city potentially in jeopardy. And Paul and I didn't really particularly care that was a real good explanation of why we need to change, but we both said, well, we're volunteers. We're not paid council people, so, you know, if this is how you want to do it, that's fine. And then we both said, you know, at the end of the day, city council was going to vote and have the final determination anyway. So we weren't that upset because we were never the final say. But the way it happened was really just like, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna make these changes, and really, you guys don't have a say in it. I mean, this is how it was presented to us. And I personally, by the way, so for you guys, this happened my very first meeting as chair. So I really kind of took it personally because all of a sudden we're making this change, my very first meeting as chair. And I was like, you know, is it because I'm chair now? Were we making these changes or what? And I really felt some kind of way about it. I didn't take it too personally, but because when we had the discussion, I understood. But, you know, there had been a vote, and Scott and Kenneth, you guys may remember, there had been a vote where we voted all in favor one way, and then city council voted the exact opposite. And it kind of, people felt that put them, you know, in a precarious position of having to defend their vote versus our vote, which was completely the opposite way. And so, we were called and said we're going to make this change, and here's why, and we think this is best for the city. And so Paul and I, being the good public servants that we are, we said that's fine. We didn't necessarily agree with it, but said that's fine. We're going to roll with it. Now, having said that, I really want to stop there because I'll give my comments as you all will give your comments about where we go from here moving forward. But this is a public hearing, so we'll follow our normal process for that, and that is after the discussion by staff, we then turn to see if there's anyone here from the public who has an opinion for or against, and then we'll come back and let the commissioners voice their opinions. Having said that, is there anyone here who would like to speak relative to this issue, for or against? Ms. Brown, please.
And just for clarification, I know you probably didn't, it's a public workshop still,
sorry.
it quite isn't, not quite, but.
Public workshop, pardon me. Thank you for the correction. Ms. Brown, please step up to the mic and give us your name and what area of town you live in.
Suzanne Brown, and I live in Crescent Oak. City Council should reinstate the public hearing designation to the Planning Commission. In fact, they never should have removed it. I feel it was an abuse of their power when they did it, and Mike Link, I am very proud of the fact that you went on record and told what really actually happened back then. Citizens have been able to voice their concerns, but this panel of experts, and that's what you guys are, panel of experts, has been powerless to vote and go on record regarding exactly who supports or opposes issues that you address. By casting an official vote, each of you will be tasked with examining every aspect of and clearly stating your reasons to support or oppose each proposal. The Planning Commission is comprised of a variety of citizens. An emphasis is made to have members from the field of architecture, engineering, construction, and you bring specific skill sets into the discussion. You function as the technical experts when it comes to some proposals. Not having a vote takes away the strength of this commission. So I'm extremely happy to see this moving forward. In fact, I'm surprised that it took this long to see it being addressed and to correct something many citizens saw as a misuse of power when City Council stripped the Planning Commission's right to vote. I do have a few questions or comments. You can look at them either way you want to look at them. At the time the vote was stripped from this commission, citizens were told it was because of a legal issue and only one public hearing could be held. But the regulation says at least one public hearing had to be held. It didn't say a second public hearing could not be held. Other cities and counties all over Georgia kept their voting power intact. If it was against the law, then why was Peachtree City the only city to make that change? At this exact minute in time, the Planning Commission cannot vote. They are restricted to making recommendations, right? So tonight, you don't even get to vote to get your vote back. You just have to make a recommendation that you do. As a citizen, I'm telling you to recommend that they correct this egregious error and that they reinstate your right to vote and conduct public hearings. Has anyone in the city administration, city staff, or city council current tried to tell any of you that you should recommend that you not get your public hearing right back? Because if they have done that, don't listen to them. As a citizen in Peachtree City, I want to know exactly how every member of this planning commission votes on every issue that comes before you. Many people do not realize that you are all volunteers. You do not get paid, and I value your opinion. I view you as a valuable resource, a panel of experts, and another set of eyes and ears looking at every single issue going in front of council for public hearing. So I value your commitment, and I value your vote, and I hope you agree.
Thank you. Seeing how she's the only one here, no, that's okay. We commend you for being here, for sure. So, commissioners, before we open up for comment, let me ask any of you if there are any questions you have of Robin of the staff relative to this issue. Any questions for her about this? Go ahead, Commissioner Chris.
So, you had mentioned that in the table of the legislative versus quasi-judicial, we really only handle the stuff in the legislative part of that table. Is that reflected then in, because I'm reading through the proposed amendment to the ordinance, is that reflected in what we would be able to hear as a public hearing? Or is it just in the nature of how we're organized?
No, there's an ordinance that says that the rezonings go to, and that is in there. The one that is not in there is the one that says variances go straight to city council, because we're not changing that. So yes, to answer your question, the ordinance reflects the legislative actions of the table.
Got it. And I see also in the proposed amendment, there's a legal notification requirement for a local newspaper. A lot of folks don't get newspapers anymore.
The Georgia Planners Association and will continue to lobby the legislature to say that this is an outdated requirement. In fact, when they updated the law, one of the things they updated was notification for certain types of zoning, so that they wanted more than just legal ads, but they didn't do it for the other types. I mean, I think to me that displays that they know that legal ads in papers are
Source of revenue.
well, our paper, I mean, yeah, they pittance what we pay them. I mean, I can't imagine that they're making any money, but it's really just a sign of a time gone by. And I don't know if anybody's really figured out how to get in front of everybody. I think it's the proverbial question is, how do you get people to notice things are going on?
So is it a state requirement that we post it? So it's a state requirement?
Yeah.
So, I guess the question I have is, because I think some citizens, may, read the newspaper and get notifications through the newspaper, should we go above and beyond that kind of notice and maybe post things on our website, or do we already go above and beyond?
That would be a policy decision made by city council, and I can certainly put in there that you all asked the question if that's something that they wanted to consider.
Sure.
Additional, other than, and so what you're saying is, in addition to the legal ads and the signs posted on the property, something. Do you have any idea what that something is?
Maybe there's a section in our newsletter where you can click a link, right?
Okay.
And then you can see all the notices that have been posted.
That's a
right?
great idea. I love it. New ideas. That's great. Okay.
That's all the questions.
Sure. Any other questions? So I guess what I would say to our newest commissioners, don't feel, please, if you don't have an opinion, you don't have to have one, because this is an issue that some of us have been dealing with for a while, and I don't want you to feel like we're putting you on the spot by having a position. If you have a position, that's fine. But if you don't, I don't want you to feel like, you have to say yeah and nay, because this is new to you, where for some of us, we've been dealing with this for a while. So I just say that, and again, if you have a position, that's fine and dandy. And please feel free to speak it. So let's go through them with comments by the commissioners. And Commissioner Reeves, do you have any comments?
Sure.
ahead.
My understanding of a planning commission is a forum in which the public has an opportunity to speak. I think it's a very good thing that the public will be going back to the format of the public being able to speak and not just the workshops. And I hear you. I think taking a vote and being accountable for what you think and decide in this platform is a good thing.
So if I understand you right, you then support the planning commission having the ability to vote on those matters?
Yes, I
Just
did.
wanted to be clear. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Johnston?
So, I mean, I think all I really have to say is, what do we exist for if we don't, I mean, why are we here if we don't have any power to vote, or if we don't have the ability to make a difference? I mean, I feel like, then why do we exist? So I definitely am in agreement with reinstating it.
Very good. Commissioner Rittenhouse?
Sure. I was also on the commission at the time that happened, and, was very disappointed, quite frankly, that what happened. My understanding was, again, it was against the law, that we couldn't do it, that we couldn't have this vote any longer the way we did in the public hearings, and that's kind of the feeling that I was given, whether or not, again, that was correct.
Yeah.
But that's the feel, because it was like, well, if it is against the law and we're not allowed to do it, then that's fine.
I don't, I did want to respond to that because I wasn't at all of the meetings that were held. But I know that in the meetings I was at, it was clear that we were doing more than required, that we didn't have to do the 2 meetings, but we did have to do at least 1. But I don't ever remember, and I certainly wouldn't have said that
Right.
it's illegal
It was
to do.
the feel, I think,
Okay.
is what we felt, is that the way it kind of came down was, whether if it was said directly or not, and it might not have been, but it was against the law, we couldn't do it. And again, one of those questions, well, if it is, and then everyone else, all the other jurisdictions should be doing the same thing.
think I
We're not-
remember you
We're not
asking
the
that.
only one, and if we are the only one, then why are we doing it? And as, Commissioner Link said, in my mind also, it was, I felt like we did something wrong. And because we did something wrong, part of council, as Michael said, stripped us of that vote. So I am definitely in favor of going back to what we had. I think, as everyone said, we are appointed individuals on this commission. We have very different experiences, very different expertise as part of this, and we all bring that in. And just like any other, whether elected or appointed, we should be held accountable and responsible for the votes, the comments, and everything else that we provide as part of this. And I think it's really important to go back and make sure that we have that again. I think a lot of the public, or some of the public trust was lost at that point. I think we did have the discussions and we did have the public comments and everything, but in the end, all we were doing was trying to summarize recommendations. And the commissioner took that, provided that to staff. And, I've heard, some in the background that maybe not all that information always flowed up to council, quite frankly. With going back to the public hearing, that is now a hearing. We do have a vote on record, and that should be held and heard by everyone. So I think it's very important that if we have the opportunity to go back and do what we did in the past, I think it's very important that we go ahead and do that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Hamner?
Yeah, so I'm also in support of returning back to the way that we used to be. Chairman Link, you were mentioning earlier that the vote had happened when, not just when you became the chairman, but when we were voting against things that ultimately City Council fully supported. So the timing of that felt very odd at best. And as well, I'd also been told other reasons why that vote had been taken. One of them was saying that, well, now you don't have to feel the pressure of voting against us, which also came across very odd as well. And that was not city staff or anything like that that had said that to me at that time. But the whole thing just felt very odd, and the reasoning behind it felt very muddled at best. But ultimately, you know, I felt that disappointed when the voting had been taken away, because getting information out to the public and to city council, it's tough. You know, again, newspapers are going away. People kind of pick their own communication channels that they want to follow, et cetera. I'm not going to get into that too much, but, you know, the voting really did two things, and they're both about recommendations. First of all, it put a recommendation out to city council specifically from us. The way that we have things set up now in terms of saying, here's your pros and here's your cons, in terms of the comment, it doesn't have, it's a list. It doesn't have weight to it. It doesn't have a point in terms of saying, okay, here's the pros, here's the cons, and ultimately, here's the way how we feel about that. That last piece is missing from us right now, and it's just almost like a data dump of comments. People can interpret that however they want. It doesn't have that point in terms of being like, what does this mean? And I think by having the vote, it adds that narrative in terms of us saying, the way that we ultimately would recommend for city council to consider this. And the second piece as well about the recommendations is it adds a really strong recommendation to the public. Again, getting information out is very, very difficult. And you know, when we said, hey, we're voting 0 to 5 on potentially rezoning the Governor's Square area, I mean, that was definitive on there. And then when city council came back and said 5-0 in favor, you know, exactly. Again, it just adds a point of us saying, like, here's the way how we ultimately feel on this based on, again, we're volunteers, but based on what we've heard, the way that we've interpreted information, and the work that we put into this. Again, you know, for Governor's Square, I know a lot of us went out to that area to check it out, and we chatted with the people who had filed the paperwork in order to do the rezoning. Like, we put a lot of work into that.
Sure.
And all of that work, obviously we had that voting at that time, but the subsequent work that we put in to figuring out our opinions on things has been lost.
Sure.
So it's ultimately, yes, I do agree, putting the voting back on for the public, for the planning commission would ultimately be beneficial, yes, to the public, but ultimately to city council as well.
Sure. Thank you. Commissioner Chris.
Yeah, I'm in support of this proposal. I think reinstating the hearing format and the voting brings back some weight to the consideration that, you know, this body provides to the proposals that people bring forth to us. So I'm in support of it. I would like to see, you know, some of the things we talked about earlier be, you know, investigated and possibly added to the proposal. But overall, I'm very much so in support of it.
Sure. And so lastly, I'll bring up the rear, and all of you have actually echoed my sentiments, but I'll kind of reiterate Commissioner Hamner's and say the reason why I'm in support is for those two people right there. One, and Suzanne Brown said it, we need to be accountable to the public for our vote. I do believe that. And then secondly, the council needs to understand why we voted a certain way. You know, they may or may not take that in consideration, but there may be something that they hear they hadn't thought about or hadn't been presented to them that might, you know, cause them pause to think about the issue deeply. So I think council really deserves the right to hear how and why we voted a certain way, and the public certainly deserves that right as well. So for that, for those reasons, I am in support as well. So it sounds like it's unanimous with respect to our feelings about
So if
this
you were
issue.
voting, it would be a
It'd be unanimous
5-0,
vote.
6-0.
But since tonight we're not voting, so hopefully this will make its way to council. Our recommendation of bringing back that vote, and I'm sure it will. Councilman Holland sitting right there, I'm sure. You know. So anyway, I think you've heard why we're here, and I think, you know, Commissioner Johnson said as well. If we don't have the ability to vote, why are we here? I mean, you know, again, that's part of the attraction, if you will, of being a commissioner, is that you have an opportunity to vote that means something. And that, you know, your public service does mean something and it counts for something. So anyway, so if there are any other thoughts before we you know, end this part of it?
One of the things I would like to bring up, and I think you brought a good point, is getting the information out. I know we have struggled with that since I was, you know, an alternate and then been on this commission now for number of years. It is amazing the amount of information is out there and the amount of information that people don't know anything about. And it's tough, it's very difficult. You know, we don't have a local paper. You know, we used to have Ben come in Ben's passed. Unfortunately, you know, Cal's been here a couple times, but we really don't have a local Peachtree city paper. And it would be wonderful to have one, but we don't have anything like that. So we have to rely on what gets out on the Citizen or any other, you know, Fayette County News or anything we can get out there. So looking at alternate channels, I think it's a great idea. I mean, you know, we just had a newsletter come out, was it today? Or it was, went through everything, just, oh, okay, that's interesting, and I'm gonna go ahead and get a little more information on that and see what's going on. So I think that would be a great source to have that. And I know it's difficult with variances or rezoning, that we can only put the sign basically by the property. And not everyone knows, it would be nice to be able to put it out on the major thoroughfares if we were able to do that, because people see that. If it's back in off, you know, kind of the beaten path for something, only the people that are specifically going back there are gonna know anything about that rezoning. So we definitely have a lot of challenges, and is there a simple answer or simple place we can go? No, there's not, but I think it's good to explore all the options to try to get as much out there, you know, to the public as possible.
And I support that as well. I know that, you know, I've heard, and I'm sure a lot of you have as well, let's use some really recent examples, the Caliper Car Wash. A lot of people didn't know what was going in there. And when they found out that a car wash was going in there, they were upset. Now, if there was some vehicle for that kind of information to be put out before, we may have seen more people at council or here when that project came up to talk about it. Another example was the Popeye's chicken. Remember, I mean, a lot of people didn't know a Popeye's chicken was going in there. And when they found out, they were really upset. Well, they got the word from, I guess, social media or from word of mouth. And I guess, again, to your point, if we had a way of just being able to get more out there about what development projects are being discussed, it may, you know, encourage more people to be like Ms. Brown and show up here and voice an opinion one way or another. They may not, but again, a lot of people hear about things after the fact and then want to complain. And that's the nature of the beast, and I get that. But still, I think if there were an opportunity to publicize it, there may be some more folks who may be proactive with respect to their feelings and their attendance to voice their feelings. So I support that as well. All right. Anything else for the good of the order? Because that's the last item on our agenda. Well, if not, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there such?
Mr. Chairman, I motion that we adjourn.
I was going to say, we're a little slow with that. Is there a second? Second. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Before the gavel, Lord, we have a meeting on February 13th, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and that's a go for sure, right? So we will see you all on February 13th. We're now adjourned.